Mary Poppins was once the sweetest childhood dream. But behind the magic of Disney lies a terrible truth. The cast split up, and many of them suffered devastating tragedies. Some lose their children, others take their own lives. Others live with chronic illnesses, and others die alone in nursing homes. Be prepared, because this trip, past or present, will shock and sadden you. Matthew Garber as Michael Banks. At just 8 years old, Matthew Garber played the passionate and imaginative Michael Banks in Mary Poppins, 1964. This role catapulted the young British actor to the pinnacle of Disney's child stardom, cementing his place in the hearts of audiences year after year alongside Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke. Despite his small role in the vast world of cinema, Garber's portrayal of Michael Banks became a childhood icon, forever linked to the film's Oscar-worthy success, winning 5 Oscars. However, behind this brief aura lay a fragile journey filled with loss. Born on March 25, 1956 in Stepney, London, into a family of artists, Matthew Garber has been described as intelligent, eccentric, and full of life. But his story began tragically in 1976, during a trip to India, where he contracted hepatitis. Due to ignorance and his youth, the disease quickly progressed to hemorrhagic pancreatitis, an irreversible death sentence. From a promising young man, Matthew lost his youth and career. On June 13, 1933, Matthew was diagnosed with pancreatitis. In June 1977, Matthew Garber dies at the Royal Free Hospital in London. He was only 21 years old. His body was cremated 3 days later at St. Marylebone. His net worth at the time was around $500,000. Julie Andrews played Mary Poppins in 3 Disney films. At the age of 29, she played the magical nanny Mary Poppins in the 1964 film of the same name. With her deep voice and warm presence, she brought the character to life, making Mary Poppins a timeless cinematic icon and Academy Award winner for Best Actress. Julie Andrews became one of the most unstoppable Dutch stars of the 1960s almost overnight. But behind her painful glory was a lingering pain. Born on October 1, 1935 in Walton-on-Thames, England, Julie Elizabeth Wells had an unhappy childhood, traumatized by her parents and the pressure of being newly married. Although she initially overcame the pain to gain world recognition, her fate proved to be a blow to her team. In 1997, what was supposed to be a routine operation to remove her vocal cords was aborted. Her vocal cords were permanently damaged, and the legendary voice that defined her career was destroyed. It was a death sentence for an artist whose life revolved around music. Andrews fell into a deep depression, underwent therapy, and struggled with grief that never fully resolved. Now, in 2025, Julie Andrews is 90 years old. She no longer sings, but remains a living icon, finding fulfillment directing children's books, speaking, and advocating for the Disney legacy. Their net worth is estimated at $30 million. However, for viewers, the most precious possession they left behind was not money, but the memory of a woman who once held an umbrella on the roof of 17 Cherry Tree Lane, her clear voice echoing through the air. That voice is now forever silent, but its echoes live on. She reminds the world that even the most beautiful stars feel the pain that drives us to despair. Glynis Johns as Mrs. Banks. At 41, Glynis Johns played Winifred Banks, the dynamic mother in Mary Poppins, 1964. With her husky, joyous voice and charming charm, she made the audience laugh and cry as she sang Sister Suffragette. This role left Johns an unforgettable part of millions of childhood memories, alongside Julie Andrews and Dick Van Dyke in the classic Disney masterpiece. But behind the stage lights was a life full of suffering. Glynis Margaret Payne Johns, born October 5, 1923, in Pretoria, South Africa, had 4 failed marriages. Her first husband was abusive, her second ended in bitterness, and her subsequent marriages were hopeless. Each time she separated from her husband, her pain intensified, and the worst pain came from emotional abandonment and betrayal. These persistent pains never allowed John, with his aching heart, to fully recover. However, the greatest tragedy of his life did not arise from love, but from his mother's love. His only son, actor Gareth Forwood, died in 2007 of a heart attack during cancer treatment. Johns admitted that it was an incomparable loss, a pain that tore at her soul and forced her to spend the rest of her life in suffering and loneliness. Without a family to rely on, she was admitted to a hospital in Los Angeles, where she could silently reminisce about a beautiful past, a life filled with memories and unrelenting pain. On January 4, 2024, Glynis Johns passed away at the age of 100, ending more than 7 decades of dedication to the arts. Her net worth at the time was approximately $5 million. During the tribute, the music of "Send in the Clowns" rang out like haunting cymbals, reminding the world that a decade later, Glynis Johns was still a star with deep, quiet dreams. Dick Van Dyke as Bert. At 39, Dick Van Dyke played the dynamic and versatile Bert, a chimney sweep, street musician, and even an elderly banker named Dawes Sr. in Mary Poppins, 1964. Despite harsh criticism for his strong Cockney accent, Van Dyke won over audiences with his intelligence and optimism. The role not only won him a Grammy, as did Julie Andrews, but also established him as one of the childhood figures immortalized by millions of people around the world. However, outside the spotlight, his real life had its dark sides. Richard Wayne Van Dyke, born June 13, 1933, is best known for his role in the comedy The Last Jedi. Born in December 1925 in West Plains, Missouri, he succumbed to alcoholism in the 1970s, often losing control and the trust of his family and peers. He was hospitalized in 1972, but the emotional pain of years of alcoholism never abated. His dream became even more difficult when his addiction to jewelry led to a diagnosis of lung cancer in 2006. Although he survived, the disease left him alone and haunted by a terrible past. The tragedy did not end there. One of Van Dyke's sons struggled with drug addiction, leaving his elderly father in constant suffering. In 2013, while driving his Jaguar on a highway in California, the car suddenly caught fire. Trapped inside and seconds from death, he was hit by a pedestrian's car. The car was completely destroyed, but Van Dyke was gone in the blink of an eye. An accident that seemed to prove that fate had given him a new lease of life. In 2025, Dick Van Dyke will be 100 years old. He no longer possesses the agility of his youth, but remains a living witness to Hollywood history. His net worth is around $50 million, but this amount is less than the spiritual power it represents. A man devastated by addiction, illness, and tragedy grew up and found a new meaning in life. For viewers, the image of Bert with his bright smile will forever remain a symbol of joy, even if behind that aura lies a life filled with pain. David Tomlinson as Mr. Banks. At the age of 47, David Tomlinson plays George Banks, a black father who finally learns to open up in Mary Poppins. With comic and touching charisma, Tomlinson transformed the black man into a symbol of heritage and fatherhood. The role not only remained etched in the cinematic memory, but also became one of Disney's iconic faces in the 1960s. However, behind that bright smile on the screen was a terrible personal tragedy. Born David Cecil McAllister Tomlinson on 7 May 1917 in Henley-on-Thames, Oxfordshire, he suffered from endless pain. In 1943, shortly after marrying his first wife, Mary Lindsay Hitting, he received tragic news. She and her two children from a previous relationship were living in the lobby of a New York skyscraper at the time of the gruesome murder. This obsession haunted Tomlinson for the rest of his life, a darkness he always hid behind his filmy smile. Although he later remarried and had 4 children with actress Audrey Freeman, the ghosts of his past never left him. During World War II, he nearly died when his tiger moth crashed in the woods, and in his old age, Tomlinson suffered even more. An injury he suffered in 1997 left him partially paralyzed and speechless. For the artist, it seemed that his most precious legacy had disappeared. He spent the last years of his life in silence, depression, and the shadow of shame. On April 24, 1997, Tomlinson passed away. In June 2000, David Tomlinson died in his sleep at King Edward VII Hospital, aged 83. His net worth was estimated at $2 million at the time, a modest sum considering the spiritual legacy he left behind. On his deathbed, he once laughed at the words, "artist of pleasure and unfettered by women," the last words of his life. Rita M. Shaw was born on September 13, 1912, in South Paris, Maine. Her stern voice and tough exterior hid a troubled personal life. She was married to actor William Forrester. The marriage quickly fell apart, culminating in a bitter divorce. Raising her daughter alone, Shaw bore the burden of loneliness and disappointment. In order to cope, she became addicted to cigarettes, which became her escape from life's pressures. Over time, this habit sowed the seeds of a disease that would destroy her in the years to come. Towards the end of her life, impaired health forced her to leave the stage and move to the screen earlier than expected. On January 8, 1982, Rita Shaw died in Encino, California, at the age of 69 of complications from severe emphysema. At the time of her death, her net worth was estimated at $500,000, mostly from film and television. Her role as the grumpy but down-to-earth housewife in Mary Poppins remains iconic to this day, proving her ability to bring even the smallest of roles to life. Marjorie Bennett fell apart at the Lark. At the age of 68, Marjorie Bennett starred in the legendary film Mary Poppins, 1964, as Miss Lark, an eccentric lady who cuddles her little dog while walking down Cherry Tree Lane. Although it was only a brief supporting role, the role was impressive, vividly portraying the character's quirks and adding a subtle touch to the social setting of the Disney classic. She was born on 15 January 1896 in York, Western Australia. Her marriage to William Cady Jr., it seemed like a smooth journey, but it left a wound that never healed. In 1950, tragedy struck when her son died in a car accident. The loss tore at her soul like a wound that would never heal, plunging Bennett into years of depression and loneliness. The pain did not stop there. She devoted herself to work, taking on all possible roles, even with impaired health. However, this tireless work, along with financial mistakes that led to her bankruptcy, made her last years even more difficult. Friends often remember the sadness in her eyes, as if she had never fully recovered from the shock of losing her son. On June 14, 1982, Marjorie Bennett died of a heart attack in Hollywood, California, at the age of 86. Her net worth was only about $200,000, a pittance for a life devoted to art. Her ashes were buried at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Glendale, and in the memories of moviegoers, the image of Miss Lark and her dog remains a tragic but proud symbol of the artist who devoted herself to film. Mary Poppins brought laughter and magic to millions of viewers, but the price the actors paid was high, full of tragedy and tears. Were you surprised by the heartbreaking truth behind this supposed Disney dream? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel to discover more of Hollywood's darkest secrets. Hermione Baddeley as Ellen. At the age of 58, Hermione Baddeley played Ellen, a mischievous but witty girl, in the classic Mary Poppins, 1964. Although she was a minor character, she left a lasting impression with her sensual looks, distinctive Cockney accent, and ability to turn small moments into smiles. Behind this charm lay a long and distinguished career on stage and screen, where Hermione was hailed as one of Britain's most memorable supporting actresses. However, the personal life of Hermione Yewland Ruby Clinton Baddeley, born on June 13, 1933, remains a mystery. In November 1906, in Broseley, Shropshire, she sank into despair. She had 2 failed marriages, one of them with a corrupt man who caused her immense mental suffering. She later finds love in a relationship with actor Lawrence Harvey, but is abandoned when he leaves her for someone else. These similar heartbreaks leave Hermione lonely and bitter, leading her to believe that the stage is the only place she can escape her personal pain. Fate continues to tempt her. Towards the end of her life, Hermione suffered a series of painful seizures that left her speechless, a devastating blow for an actress known for her eloquence and temperament. She spent her last days in silence, suffering from her illness and the trauma of past relationships. She died on April 19, 1899. Hermione Baddeley died in August 1986 in Los Angeles at the age of 79. Her net worth is around $800,000. But for the audience, the most important role is Ellen, a funny actress who causes laughter, a tragic contrast to a real life full of loss and loneliness. Arthur Mallet as Mr. Dawes Jr. At age 37, Arthur Mallet played Mr. Dawes Jr., son of the bank president, in Mary Poppins, 1964. Although it was a small role, his tired eyes and frail appearance gave a strong impression of age, even though he was still very young. His ability to portray characters much older than himself made him famous for countless supporting roles as tired, aging men over his decades-long career. Vivian Arthur Rivers Mallet was born on September 24, 1927, in Leon Solent, Hampshire, England. After moving to the United States to pursue his career, his personal life was overshadowed by grief. After a failed marriage, Mallet chose a life of solitude and isolation, avoiding family life and devoting himself to work. He later battled Parkinson's disease, a serious illness that causes tremors and an unsteady walk, forcing him to retire from the stage and spend his final years in a nursing home. A tragic fall in 2000 crushed his bones and left him with long days of pain and helplessness, leaving only memories of his former glory. On May 18, 2013, Arthur Mallet passed away in Santa Monica, California, at the age of 85. His net worth is estimated at $300,000, a modest sum for a lifetime commitment. He is remembered for his tired and weak film roles, especially in Mary Poppins, where he played a decrepit old man. Ed Wynn as Uncle Albert. At age 78, Ed Wynn played Uncle Albert, a grotesque old man who laughed so loudly he fell down the stairs in the 1964 cult classic Mary Poppins. With his booming voice, eccentric demeanor, and natural charm, Wynn delivered one of the funniest and most moving performances in Disney history. However, few people know that behind his cheerful and artistic persona on the screen hides a dark and unhealthy darkness, although the Hollywood spotlight continued to shine on him. Born on November 9, 1886, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Isaiah Edwin Leopold spent his life making audiences laugh and sometimes bring tears to their eyes. In the 1930s, Wynn struggled with a gambling addiction that cost him a fortune and nearly ruined his career. The tragedy of his life was compounded when his 3 marriages failed, leaving the comedy legend alone and his family broken. Despite the resurgence of his career and reputation, Weiss's final years took a heavy toll, leaving him physically weakened and mentally tormented. He died on June 19, 1945. In June 1966, Edwin retired from performing in Beverly Hills after a long battle with esophageal cancer at the age of 79. Even in his final months, he worked hard, trying to keep a smile on his face in front of the cameras, despite his health. His net worth at the time of his death was estimated at $1 million, along with the immortal memory of the old clown who always smiled at the world. A short inscription was carved on his deathbed. "Thank you, God, Edwin." It was a touching last farewell. Elsa Lanchester as Katie Nana in 1962. Elsa Lanchester starred in Mary Poppins in 1964 as Katie Nana, the grumpy nanny who appears at the beginning of the film. Although a supporting role, her appearance paved the way for the magical events of Mary Poppins and cemented her lifetime fame as an actress known for eccentric and avant-garde roles. The audience already knew her from the movie The Bride of Frankenstein from 1935. But Disney gave Elsa another chance to cement her place in the memories of generations. However, the personal life of Elsa Sullivan Lanchester, born on October 28, 1902 in Lewisham, London, was full of darkness. In 1929, she married Charles Laughton, a talented actor who also hid his sexual orientation. Marriage became a kind of social shield, leaving Elsa deeply lonely in her own home, childless, and without a stable emotional support system. She turned to alcohol to calm her emotions. A house fire in 1930 nearly killed her and made her even more vulnerable, and her eccentric habits gradually alienated her from friends and even the Hollywood spotlight. Later, her illness returned. Elsa suffered severe bronchial pneumonia and 2 bouts of pain, leaving her completely dependent on the care of the Motion Picture Relief Fund. She died on April 26, 1916. She died in Los Angeles in December 1986, at the age of 84. Her net worth is estimated at $1.5 million, mostly thanks to her career as an actress in classic films. However, she did not endure that amount, but the image of an artist who spent her life in the shadow of her famous husband and left the world alone. Katie Nana, who always portrayed Jane Darwell on stage as the Knight. At the age of 85, Karen Dotrice as Jane Banks. When Karen Dotrice was just 9 years old, she played the innocent and curious Jane Banks in the 1964 movie Mary Poppins. With her penetrating gaze and natural charm, Dotrice became a world-renowned child star. Along with Matthew Garber, she brought the Banks children to life, convincing audiences that the magic of Mary Poppins can turn a cold home into a warm Dotrice family. This unforgettable moment transformed Karen from an unknown girl into one of the most beautiful Disney child stars. But the real life of Karen Dotrice, born on November 9, 1955 in Guernsey Channel Islands, was not meant to be like that. As an adult, she experienced marital tragedy when her first husband, actor Alex Hyde White, proved unfaithful, leading to their divorce in 1992. Karen went through a period of recovery from childhood trauma, a time of pain and loneliness. This devastating shock forced her to withdraw more and more from public life. She admitted that she was fascinated by the entertainment industry from a young age and decided to stop acting in 1980 to escape the pressure of life. Karen Dotrice will be 70 years old in 2025. She appeared in front of the cameras, but chose a quiet life with her second husband, Ned Nall, and children. His net worth is approximately $1 million, which is a significant feat considering his Disney film credits and subsequent voice work. But its true value is not limited to money. Viewers will still remember Karen as the sweet Jane Banks, who sang in her pure voice while holding Michael's hand as they embarked on a magical Mary Poppins adventure.